Hello, I'm Chloe Ryan Woolfolk, and today I am interviewing Maia Chaka, the first African American female referee in the National Football League. Hello, Miss Maia Chaka. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Chloe. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so happy to be interviewing today. So let's get into it. Let's go back. You graduated from NSU in 2006.
Yes.
How does it feel to be back? Are you feeling nostalgic?
I'm feeling lost because I didn't know where to park. I just remember everywhere I used to park on here, my car would get a boot on it or it'd be towed. So I was just afraid to park without a pass. But nostalgic, yes. It always feels good to be able to come back home and and feel welcomed with open arms with people that are here. So it's amazing.
Okay. So let's talk about now. How did you become an NFL referee?
A lot of hard work. It all started, officiating, high school and Pop Warner football games here in Virginia. And after 3 years of working high school, I worked the state championship, the first woman in Virginia to work a state championship game of football.
Okay.
And so after that, I started working Division I college football, which is very rare. Most people, right after they finish high school, they work small college football, D2, D3. I made the jump straight from high school straight to Division I.
Wow.
And that was mostly because when I went to a camp, I went inside of a room and there were 122 officials. I was the only female and I was the only black person in the entire room.
Wow.
And I just remember that moment being very uncomforting. Where there was a guy who became my college supervisor. Gerald Austin was in there, and he saw the reaction that all the other men gave me when I walked into the room. And he's the one who approached me, and he gave me an opportunity to work straight for Conference USA. And he told me the reason why he gave me that opportunity was because he knew that I had what it took. I had the confidence through me being able to communicate with him and just being able to sit through that weekend, being the only person who looked like me. He knew I was resilient, and he wanted to give me an opportunity and give me a chance to succeed, because he said if I would have gone up through the ranks with the rest of these people, I wouldn't be where I am today, because they would have made it hard for me. So I'm very appreciative for that opportunity.
And how was that transition from high school to D1?
It was tough because I wasn't qualified to work Division I football. I'm going to be honest with you. But because you're not qualified doesn't mean that you don't have the potential. It's the same how when you draft a player as a rookie, you know they got the potential to be what they are, but you still have to put the work in order to be successful. And for me, that was the first time I worked games that we had instant replay. There's no instant replay in high school. And so to jump to that, and now all your decisions are put on blast, and all my calls get overturned when they go to replay. It was it was a tough pill to swallow. But, I worked a lot of games where they were blowout games, so it didn't really matter it did matter what I was doing in the game, but what I did didn't have any competitive impact. So it allowed me to grow.
Okay. And when did you want to become a referee in the first place?
Wow.
With Pop Warner, was when you started Pop Warner, you were like, oh, I love this so much. I want to ref for the NFL. Like, what was your goal always, the NFL?
No, my goal was just to always have fun and make some money. I always like to have a hobby. And my love for officiating actually started right here at Norfolk State. A lot of people don't know that the gym, that's Eccles Hall, is named after my great uncle. And he officiated for 32 years, basketball and football in the CIAA. He officiated the Pan-African games for basketball. So he was, a pretty good basketball official back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, where black people weren't even considered human. He was able to cross all kinds of racial barriers and boundaries, just being him. Yeah. And looking through his photo album, that inspired me to always want to officiate. And then when I was here at Norfolk State and I was working on my health and PE degree, I need to find multiple streams of income. I didn't want to just become a PE teacher. So it's real important for me. I wanted to figure out all the different ways that I could make money within my major, within my discipline. And my work study here, I worked through student activities under Mr. Talafero. And he had me doing the intramurals, and I would do the officials for the flag football games and the officials for the basketball games. And we just had bad officials for both games. And I just realized that they were bad because that's what that's what could we afford in our budget. Yeah. And I used to heckle them the same way everybody else heckles bad referees. And so one of the guys said, well, if you think you can do it, why don't you come out here and try? And that always just stuck in my head. And I always just want to prove somebody wrong. So I started officiating pretty much just to prove somebody wrong that I can do it better than them.
You started it off here.
My love for it started here. I didn't start until the year after I graduated, and I started working as a PE teacher, phys ed teacher in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
I started officiating there because a coworker forced me to go to a meeting, and he says, you're going to officiate football. I wanted to start with basketball first, but he made me do football because there weren't any women doing football at the time.
And look at that.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
So how did you balance being a PE teacher and officiating?
It was, it was easy doing the lower levels, when you start off doing high school, because I'm working in the high school, and so all the games were played, Friday nights, Thursday nights, after school hours. And so it was easy for me to get good because I worked all the time, and then I worked every Saturday at the Sportsplex from like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I was constantly working, and I never turned down an assignment. And that's key to whenever you're trying to be successful, you want to be good at something, you have to put the time in, and and you have to put that work in order to get better. And at the time, I was just doing it because I loved it, and I loved having to understand something new, and I loved the growth process. And then once I started working Division I football, it became tough because now we're flying out of town. And I had games in El Paso, Texas. I had games in Shreveport, Louisiana. Just to fly into Marshall, that's in West Virginia. That's not a drive. So Conference USA, we didn't have schools that we can drive to. The time when I came in, East Carolina was the closest, and Old Dominion followed much later. So for me, I would have to leave work on a Friday, work a football game on a Saturday, fly back on a Sunday, and come to work on a Monday.
Wow.
And it got even tougher when I started working in the Pac-12, which is now on the West Coast. And now my games weren't in El Paso, my games were in Washington, in Oregon, in Hawaii, in UCLA. And the same thing, I'd have to fly on a Friday and come back and work on a Monday and deal with the time zone change.
Yeah, totally different time zones, I was about to say. So are you still working for Virginia Beach schools now?
I'm not. So I resigned from Virginia Beach Public Schools last year, was my last year, and then I started working with an Achievable Dream who partners with Virginia Beach Public Schools, and I just resigned with Achievable Dream. My last day was April 7th. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nostalgic.
Yeah.
How are you feeling after?
Free.
Free?
Yeah, a lot of free time, because before you're working 80, 90 hours a week, just not even thinking about it, and you're constantly grinding, because for me, that was just always the thing. I've always had multiple jobs, even in high school, being a student athlete and still going to work. Here when I came to Norfolk State, you go to school, I had work study, I was working full time as an assistant manager in Champs and MacArthur Mall. Like I've always done multiple things. I've never just been one. And, now I'm at a point in my life where if I want to do multiple things, it's my choice. It's, not because I have to. Before, we're so used to multitasking and doing so many things because we have to, and that's the way that we need to make ends meet. But, I'm very fortunate, and I'm in a very good place in my life right now where I'm able to make my own decisions and understanding how much of an impact that my voice has on other people, and just finding my platform to use that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you work under pressure? How were you organized to balance, okay, I got to go to work, I got to work in student activities, and I have to be a student, and I have to get these good grades as well. So, how did you find a balance in all of that?
I don't really know, and my balance is I'm different.
You build different.
Yeah, I'm built real different. I feel I get a lot of pleasure in growth.
Yeah.
And when I don't feel that I'm growing, that's when I have to make different decisions. That's the reason why I had to leave from teaching, because I didn't feel myself growing anymore in that profession. My impact has to be used on a different scale, on my own terms. And so, being able to balance that stuff, you have to still find a way to work in a social life or socialize a little bit. And so for me with officiating, we work with the same crew every single weekend. And so, we'll build in some time to go out and enjoy the city where we're in. So that would be somewhat of a social life. Now I'm doing a lot of traveling with public speaking, and I'm able to get out in those cities as well and meet different people. So it's trying to work that social aspect into your work aspect, but also still making sure that you're keeping yourself professional at all times.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about how you got to the NFL.
Hmm.
So, how did you go from D1 to the NFL? How did that opportunity happen for you?
Wow. So that actually happened when I was hired in Conference USA. Gerald Austin, he officiated in the NFL for about 27 years, and he'd worked about 3 or 4 Super Bowls. So he was like the man when it came to like scouting talent. So as soon as he hired me in Conference USA, he put me around. I'm looking at it now, the people who he made me work with are all in the NFL now, like my old crew chief, my old umpire. So he put me in a mix of people who were already in that pipeline, that were working towards that knew that he could mold me into being a professional. And so what happens is once you're doing well, like in your college season, I did well my first year, I did well my second year. He started to have people from the NFL come out to scout me. And so that's how that works though. So like once you're working in one job, if you want to get promoted, your bosses have to speak up for you and speak well for you. And that's with every college conference, not just mine. And so that's how the NFL does it. 'Cause there's no application for you to go out and just apply to be an NFL referee. You know, your name has to be thrown into a pool. And so each year, the National Football League probably has roughly around 2,000 to 3,000 officials that they have in the pool that they're going out to scout and to look at. And they tier those officials. You know, tier 1 meaning that they're ready to enter the development program. Tier 2, they still need some work. Tier 3, they're real rough, but we're going to work on them. And we just want to see them develop from there.
Yeah.
And so you just have to work your way up through those tiers at that point and, you know, keep your nose clean. And understanding that you have to be perfect, not on the field, but your life off the field has to be free of controversy. And you just have to really live like a straight and narrow life, you know, because you're under a microscope for everything that you do.
Yeah. And where were you at in those tiers when you were in the pool? Do you know where you were at?
I have no idea. It doesn't matter because I'm in there now. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that I started in the bottom in tier 3 and then I eventually worked my way up. I know that there was a time where I was right there on the cusp of being hired and something happened and I got bumped back all the way back down to tier 3. Not sure what it was. There was nothing that I did personally. It's just that sometimes when you have a change of leadership or you have a different movement, some people want to get their people in. And so that's all that is. So you just have to continue to put in the work and wait your time. And, you know, you can't outwork quality work. Like if I'm constantly producing a good product, no matter what you want to do and how much you want to avoid it, your work is always going to rise to the top and it's always going to outshine anybody else. So
Exactly. I like that.
it doesn't matter who I work for. So
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So tell me about the training. How was the rigorous training for the NFL?
So that's tough. We have a rule book. It looks almost like a Bible. It's seriously about this thick,
Oh, wow.
long pages, and that's tough. It takes about a good 5 or 6 years to actually really learn the rules. And then when you actually learn them, they change rules every year.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's tough. It's a constant struggle that we're dealing with. So in order to train, you know, you start with your rule book. We do have a 200 question test that comes out. Yeah, 200 questions, and we can do an open book, but then when the clinic test, when we go for our meetings, we can't do an open book. We actually have to read and answer these questions. So the 200 question pre-test that you do, that just to help prepare you and, you know, to bring about discussion in order to prepare you for the real test. It's just like college, like for the
Wow.
most part. We also have, you know, physical fitness assessments that we have to go through. In order for us to even just apply those rules, because it's one thing that you know the rules and you can read a rule and you can fill out a bubble sheet, but the next thing is you have to actually apply those same concepts on the field. And that's where it comes to us going to training camps and going to mini camps and essentially working preseason games. And also our mechanics. Are we in the right space at the right time to make a call on the field? So all that goes into like practice. And I know I'm probably speaking Spanish to a lot of people. People are like, what are mechanics? What are this? It's the way that we walk, talk, throw our flag, everything that we have when we hit out on the field. They just we're judged. As soon as we step on the field, we're judged from that point on until we get on the bus. So someone's looking at our every move.
And how long do these trainings usually last?
Well, for the average official that came in the program, they will be under training for maybe about 2 or 3 years until they were either hired or they were released. I was actually under training with the NFL for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so twice as
And
long.
How long are these tests frequent? Do you have to Because I know you said the rules change like every year. So do you have to retake the test?
We have to take a new test every year. We get a different 200 questions. And it's when you get the 200 questions, it's self-paced. But don't think it's self-paced. Oh yeah, I'm gonna just breeze through this and I'm gonna wait until the week before the clinic and do all 200. We all know how that goes, especially like when you're in college. Don't wait to write that paper at 11:30 when it's due at midnight.
Yeah.
So you want to chunk it up so that 200 questions is I'm doing 10 questions a week, or I'm trying to do 5 questions a day. If you really focus and do 5 questions a day, you set out that block of time that really lets you dig deep. And some of these questions are hard. You can't just look at it, okay, I'm answering it. You have to look at rules. You have to look at appendixes. You have to find documents and other philosophies to support it. And then you also have to write down where you found your answer. So it's,
oh, wow.
But that's what helps you learn it. So once you're able to dig that time in, you know, you're spending about an hour or 2 a day just on rules, not even on film. So by putting that time in, that's what makes you the professional. And throughout the season, we have that one test we take right before the season starts. And then throughout the season, we have weekly tests that we have to do. They're about 10 questions a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're just knocking them out.
What's the passing grade for this test? Is there a passing grade like, oh, you can't not get more than a 75 or
85, but like it's really bad if you get lower than a 90.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So could you be dropped down a tier if you get lower than 90?
You have to reach what? You won't be dropped down a tier, but you'll just be looked at like, oh, she got like an 89.
Oh, she don't know her stuff.
Exactly. And so on my clinic test last year, I got a 95, so I was good on that.
Yeah.
But they look at that because even that we're graded on our performance on the field, like by the calls that we make, the calls we don't make. It's a percentage accuracy. So you start with 100% and they have this average and it average out to the end of the year. The officials that work like Super Bowl, their grade is like a 98.999%.
Oh,
so
wow.
the tenths of a point count, the hundredths of a point count, everything counts.
Wow.
You have to have straight A's. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like a lot. Yeah. And you got to take weekly tests?
Wow. And I was supposed to still go to work. Now y'all see why I quit.
Yeah, I can imagine. So since the NFL is not only male dominated, but alpha male dominated as well, have you had to endure harassment or hazing as a female referee? And if so, how do you deal with that and still gain acceptance in the league?
I wouldn't say like harassment or hazing because they're alpha males, I'm an alpha female. And one thing I had to learn was when to turn it on and when to turn it off, because a lot of guys will feel threatened by that. And so that was about me having to learn how to communicate in their world and not come off as being brash. And there are some cultural differences, you know, that they just didn't get. I mean, you know, I'm a black woman, you know, I'm the only black woman where I'm at. Some of these guys don't talk to black women at all. So it's just a cultural barrier that's there. And a lot of things come out of their mouth. We may take it as ignorant, or you may get offended by it. But these are just some things you just can't be offended. You have to be confident in who you are. You can address the issue, but you have to find ways to address issues and address problems with these men that don't make them feel like they're being attacked. You know, I'm the woman here. I should be the sensitive one, right?
But you have to stay on guard to make sure that you're not attacking them for saying something.
So I give you an example. So I love my ponytails, right? Love them. Love my ponytails. Don't care what they are. Whatever day of the week it is, I may wear a different texture. It's cool, you know. Okay. So there was an instance where a guy on my crew, he came up to me and says, "Hey, you had, you know, different hair last week. What happened?" I said, "I switched it up." I said, "Do you want to start picking my ponytails every week? Because you wouldn't do the same thing if it was Kim Kardashian." So that was just his way of having like a micro inequity, and also, they don't know how to joke with people. So he was trying to joke. And so I didn't get offended by it. So then every week he picked out which ponytail I was going to wear every week. So you just kind of make that a part of, you know, the thing, and just don't get offended and keep
turning
it moving.
What could possibly be a bad situation into something positive that you could deal with. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the NFL started making hats so I could wear my ponytail hanging out the back. Before, before I had to tuck it. Had to tuck everything.
Ooh.
They're like, "Nah, rock your ponytail, girl."
As you should.
Yeah.
So sports fans and commentators have called attention to controversial calls in playoff games in the past few years and blame supposedly bad calls for negatively affecting the outcome of important games. So how do the NFL and its refs deal with that criticism?
We just keep it moving. You got to work the next game. You can't worry about what people say about you. And that's just like a life lesson. You know, we're human. We make mistakes. It just seems so happen, you know, our mistakes are made in front of millions of people. And people are diehard fans, like, about their teams, you know, as they should be. And players and coaches are the same way. You know, unfortunately, there's just sometimes that mistakes are made. So, you know, we just have to move on to the next.
Do you feel like you're I can't speak, sorry. Do you feel like you're more vulnerable to such criticism being a black woman?
Absolutely. But I think also because, you know, my experience level is so young. As I was the only rookie that was in the league last year. So I got the rookie treatment. You know, maybe I also got the treatment a little bit because I'm a woman. You know, I never played football, so they always use that as an excuse. But there's a lot of guys who never played football either. But
Okay.
yeah,
And you face these criticisms with confidence.
yeah, just shoot them down. They don't sign my checks at the end of the day. I'm worried about what my grades say and what my supervisors say because I'm trying to stay in the league.
Okay.
So
do you have any personal goals as a referee for the NFL?
right now, my goal is to have a successful second year and, you know, to be able to be eligible to work postseason. You know, as a rookie, we don't work postseason, we don't work playoffs. So I think it will be a testament to my hard work this year and my growth as an official if I'm able to be somewhere, you know, in postseason.
Okay. Do you think you're going to get that 98.999 and do the Super Bowl?
Well, yeah, but I can't work Super Bowl for another 5 years. But
5 years?
yeah, we have to be 5
my
years in to
gosh.
be eligible to work. But I mean, I'm shooting for that 99.9.
99.9.
Yeah,
As you should.
I'm shooting for accuracy.
As you should. As you should. So what advice would you give to Spartans, not just female Spartans, but male Spartans who are interested in officiating?
Wow. So if you're interested in officiating, especially if you are a student athlete, because you know you can only play your sport for so long, but you can absolutely officiate, you know, for years, 30, 40 years after you finish playing. So I would say the first thing is to try to get involved, find out who the local officials are, like your local chapters for high school basketball, high school football, or softball, whatever sport it is, and just start there. You can even start by doing rec games. You know, you can start by possibly putting something together. I know they have a coaching and officiating class here on campus as a part of the PE track. So there are all ways for you to get involved. And, you know, I would say, you know, just reach out to those people in your community.
Okay. And what about those that lack confidence? It seems like confidence is such a crucial tool in officiating, not just starting off small, but just gradually moving up. You have to have that confidence. So what advice would you give to those who are kind of lacking in that area?
You have to really be satisfied and happy with yourself first, and just really having a sound understanding of self-awareness, knowing how to control your actions and the impact of your actions on certain things. That's where the confidence actually starts. So knowing why it's difficult for you to hold a conversation. Now, how do I correct that? You know, what can I do to improve myself? It's all about self-improvement. And then it's also about learning whatever the subject is. Like, as a football official, I wasn't always this confident. You know, as a rookie, I was just going in and I lacked a lot of confidence. And maybe that's why it took me 7 years to get to the NFL. But as I continued to educate myself and to grow, that's where the confidence comes from. So it's like if you're having a real difficult time, you know, just like trying to find where your confidence is going to be, you know, you just have to find ways that are going to make you feel better about you and being comfortable in your skin. And then that's when your confidence begins to grow.
So even though you came into the NFL 7 years later, taking that time to educate yourself and grow is a part of your process. So everyone's on their own journey. Everyone has their own process. So you would really encourage that those who lack confidence take the time to educate yourself, self-analyze before going into the job.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know.
So, in a video released by the NFL before your debut game as the NFL's first African American female ref, you said, and I quote, "This historic moment to me is an honor, and it's a privilege that I've been chosen to represent women and women of color in the most popular sport in America, proving that I can defy the odds and overcome." How on earth do you deal with that kind of responsibility? Just all of that weight bearing on your shoulders. How do you take this on? Because you're an inspiration.
Thank you.
You're making historical movements. How do you carry this weight?
Well, I didn't really think about it like that. So you until you put it like in words. You know, I guess I've just been given a gift to be able to have, good leadership qualities. And for me, that's where I get a lot of my energy and a lot of my motivation from. Knowing that I really shouldn't be the only person where I'm at. I get sick of it 2021, 2020, 2022, and we're announcing the first black woman, the first black male, the first Hispanic something. There has to be a time where the first stops and it becomes normal for people of all cultures and people of color to be in leadership positions or holding prominent jobs. And I guess that's where a lot of that comes from in me, knowing that it doesn't just stop with me, and knowing that if I do well, that creates more opportunities for others. And so again, I take the focus, I put it back on me. Like, what am I doing to make sure that I'm growing and I'm being successful? Because again, I do worry about you, and when you're gonna get your shot, I do worry about that and what I'm gonna do to help open the doors for other people. But I can't open those doors for you if I'm not solid and I'm not performing.
Exactly.
So everything still goes back on me. But knowing that once I get mine, I can't close that door. I'm gonna push this door open. All right, I'm doing well now. Now I'm gonna kick that door open, and I'm doing great on that. Now I'm gonna raise the roof, and I'm gonna bring more people up with me. So it's all about us just growing as a culture.
I like that. And what traits make up a good leader? You said you were blessed to have to be able to be a leader. What traits make a leader to you?
You have to be a good listener, and selfless. When you're a leader, it's really a servant position. It's not about how you're going to get to the top, but it's about how you can bring others to the top with you. Being kind and compassionate, and all that. Once you have all that behind you, you have the power of the people. And that also helps with your confidence as well. You can never fail when you have a big support system behind you because of the way that you treat people along your way to success.
I like that. So is there a difference between referees, players, coaches, administrators, and members of the media and how they treat you? So basically, is there a difference in treatment? Do you sense different treatment by different coworkers?
I mean, the officials are harder on officials than anybody else because, there's 122 spots to get there. And I said, they scout 2,000 people. Out of those 2,000, there's 122 spots on the field. But each year, 122 spots don't open. Like the year I went, only one spot opened up. Oh. So I was only hired. This year, about 7 spots opened up. So it's different to get that job. So it's real, officials are competitive. And so we're always going to be hard on each other. And sometimes there are some people who aren't always happy for you when you jump them. So my own community sometimes could be the hardest people to please. But then again, that forces you to always perform. That doesn't mean I'm going to give them the same energy and the same vibe back, because I'm going to show you love regardless. But they're harder on you than anybody else would be because they also know what it takes in order for you to be successful. And, in terms of coaches and administrators, they just want you to do your job. Players just want you to do your job. As long as you call the game right and you call it fair, that's all they want you to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with a little friendly competition between refs.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you guys want to be the best you could be.
Absolutely.
And that's all you could do. All right. Have you had to make any close or controversial calls in any of your games in the last year?
I've made a bunch of them, but I can't remember what they were because I do them so often. I want to say controversial because I nail all my calls. Otherwise, y'all would have saw me on SportsCenter, or I would have been on somebody's meme somewhere because y'all know the internet's undefeated, right?
Yep.
But I nailed all my calls. You know, I had some tough sideline catches. I had some good calls that were pass interferences that were all graded correctly. I had a couple of close goal line plays that were all graded correctly. So everything that was tough, it's really hard to signal out which play because, you know, 18 weeks, everything just kind of runs together. And there may be some games where you have to make several calls like that,
Yeah.
you know, but you don't get too high on the highs because if you hang your hat on a highlight reel or just, oh, look at all these great calls I made, there's a bunch of things in the game too that you've done wrong. If you're not paying attention to those weaknesses will now start to show.
Yeah.
So myself, I always like to go back. I look at all the things I did wrong in the game. You know, things that you wouldn't notice, but I notice or that another official will notice. But if we correct those habits, you know, we'll prevent like all like the blunders and the mix-ups and everything that float around on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what has been your hardest game thus far? Do you remember which one?
My hardest game was probably in Green Bay when it was -6 degrees the day after New Year's.
Ooh.
It was just tough because of the weather conditions,
Yeah.
not necessarily because of the football. I've never worked in sub-freezing conditions, so I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
-6.
a lot of battery-operated draws
Wow.
and socks. So
All
I had
right.
to stay warm.
So give me a day in the life. Do
Uh-huh.
you doll yourself up for every game, or what does that process look like? So a day in the life. You're waking up. Today's game day. What's going on? Do you have any rituals?
Girl, I wake up, I get me a pedicure. I got a masseuse that comes in my room. No, I don't have all that. So, my normal routine is I sleep. You know, I like to get as much sleep as I possibly can. We fly in on a Saturday, and as soon as I get on Saturday, I order Uber Eats, and it's normally like juice. Like I like find wherever a juice bar is, and I try to get those delivered to my room. And I sleep as much as I can on a Saturday. And Sundays when we get up, we actually have devotional, like as a crew, where we have a time we could just go in and fellowship, and that brings us closer to perform. And we eat breakfast and we go to the stadium. You know, I put my R&B in, so I'm smoothed out and get a good stretch, you know, get loose, and then we just go to work. But there's nothing that's like necessarily a ritual. Outside of when I actually get to the stadium, one of the things I like to do, I look up and I like to count how many names or numbers are retired, like in the stadium.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I think when I went this year, I was shocked to see how many Cleveland had. And you forget, you know, that Cleveland was actually like really good. The Cleveland Browns, like they had a lot. You know, Lambeau Field had a lot. Then you go to places like Jacksonville that had like one person. So that's
Wow.
like, that's just like, but you know, that's when you could tell it's a newer franchise. So that's just one of my things is just to enjoy like the history that's involved in the game. And I just like to read all the names. You know, when you're inside of that much greatness, you don't want to take any of these opportunities for granted. You know, you want to appreciate every moment.
Taking the time to learn and acknowledge your surroundings.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ms. Chaka. And that is all the time we have for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Please come back.
All right.